At the age of 72, memory for me feels like a restless river. Sometimes it flows calm and clear, carrying soft reflections of my youth. Other times, it plunges into dark channels, hiding boulders of truth that I tried to bury decades ago. My name is Daniel Hayes, and my story begins in Willow Creek, New Mexico, a small desert town where faith was once not just a belief, but the very air I breathed. So if you're watching, baby, go ahead and like this video, comment where in the world you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's story. 'Cause this ain't just my story. It's the story of too many women who had smiled through the silence. This isn't nostalgia. It isn't a sermon. It is a true story. And it's one that still clings to my bones like a scar. A story about how loyalty can be tested, how truth can destroy everything you thought was sacred, and how courage sometimes costs you everything you believed in. When I speak, some may see me as a traitor, others as a fool, but I hope you'll see me as a man who had no choice but to follow his conscience. If you're listening from anywhere in the world, I ask you to pause, leave a comment, and subscribe, because stories like mine matter. They are painful, yes, but silence kills, and truth, no matter how heavy, can save lives. It was 1975 when I was baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. I was 22 years old, a young man full of dreams, convictions, and an unshakable sense that I found life's greatest treasure. Willow Creek, back then, was a town of just over 12,000 people. The heart of town had paved streets lined with a few shops, while the outskirts dissolved into dirt roads that stretched toward the desert. My family lived in a small, 3-bedroom house at the far edge of town. It wasn't much, but it was home. My father, Thomas Hayes, was a lumberyard worker. His hands were leathered with calluses, but his heart was bigger than the Mesa horizons. My mother, Margaret, was a seamstress. She worked from home, stitching dresses for the ladies of town with her old black Singer machine, the rhythmic hum of its pedal filling our evenings. We were a Catholic family, the kind that went to Mass every Sunday, lit candles for the saints, and prayed the rosary before bed. But you know how it is when you're young. You hunger for answers, for truth that feels deeper than tradition. One evening, when I was 19, 2 polite young women knocked on our door. They offered a Bible study. Their smiles were kind, their voices steady. My mother was cautious, but my father said, if it's about the Bible, it can't do any harm. How naive we were. Their names were Sister Naomi and Sister Evelyn. Naomi was young, maybe 25, with hair pinned neatly in a bun and dresses that always reached just below the knee. Evelyn was older, in her 40s, with a soft voice that wrapped itself around every scripture she read. Twice a week, for 6 months straight, they sat at our kitchen table. The checkered oilcloth, the smell of my mother's coffee, the creak of wooden chairs, all became the setting for revelations I thought were divine. They carried a small blue book called The Truth That Leads to Eternal Life. To me, every page was like uncovering secrets the Catholic Church had hidden for centuries. What impressed me most wasn't just the doctrine, but the organization. They arrived on time, their magazines neatly arranged, their verses memorized. They spoke with confidence that made my old Catholic catechism lessons feel lifeless. One evening, Evelyn explained Armageddon. Her calm voice contrasted with the dread her words created. Daniel, we are living in the last days. Soon only those who know the truth will survive. My blood chilled. I thought of my family, my neighbors, and my friends. You mean they'll all die if they don't accept this? I asked. Naomi leaned forward, her smile soft and angelic. That's why Jehovah sent us to you, Daniel, to help save those with sincere hearts. That night, I didn't sleep well. The weight of responsibility crushed me. The idea that billions of lives could end, and that it was partly on my shoulders to warn them. By the end of 1974, I was fully involved. I attended 3 meetings a week at the Kingdom Hall. Saturdays were for door-to-door ministry. Twice a year, I traveled to larger cities for assemblies where thousands gathered for day-long talks. My daily routine revolved around faith. I woke at 5 to read scriptures and Watchtower publications before heading to my uncle's auto repair shop, where I worked until evening. Grease covered my hands, but scripture consumed my mind. When I told my parents I planned to be baptized, My mother cried quietly that night. I heard her sobs through their bedroom wall. My father spoke to me under the shade of our old mesquite tree. "Son," he said, lighting a cigarette, "these people are different. They don't celebrate. Don't join in with the town." "Are you sure?" "Dad, the Bible says true Christians will be separate from the world," I replied with youthful conviction. He looked at the stars, smoke curling in the air. "Just promise me this. If you ever discover they aren't what they seem, have the courage to walk away." I laughed softly. "That'll never happen, Dad." But life has a way of proving us wrong. July 1975, Flagstaff, Arizona. It was sweltering, but my heart was alive with joy. More than 200 of us lined up for baptism in a makeshift pool at the district assembly. When I came out of the water, I felt reborn, as if I had truly left my old life behind. The years that followed were filled with zeal. In 1977, I was appointed a ministerial servant. By 1982, at 29, I was appointed as an elder, unusually young, but the traveling overseer praised my spiritual maturity. To be an elder in Willow Creek meant more than delivering talks. It meant counseling families, guiding young ones, and mediating conflicts. People trusted you with their deepest wounds. I carried that responsibility with pride and humility. At the time, our congregation had about 80 publishers. 5 elders, myself included, shepherded them. Most were faithful men I respected. But in 1985, a new elder moved in from Phoenix. His name was Victor Ramirez. Victor was in his early 40s, tall, with polished shoes and tailored suits that made him look like he belonged in a courtroom rather than a dusty New Mexico town. He spoke with eloquence, often quoting Greek and Hebrew terms that left the rest of us humbled. He came with his wife, Elena, a pale, quiet woman who always seemed tired, her eyes shadowed with fatigue. Their daughter, Sophia, was 12, beautiful, with long dark hair and striking green eyes. But there was something in her gaze that unsettled me, a sadness too heavy for a child. At first, everyone admired Victor. His prayers were moving, his talks profound, his shepherding visits praised. Within a year, he was appointed coordinating elder, replacing Brother Lewis, who had held the role for over a decade. Even Brother Lewis accepted it with a resigned smile. If Jehovah has blessed him, who are we to question? But I couldn't shake the unease. Something about the Ramirez family didn't fit the picture-perfect mold. I didn't yet know that Victor's arrival would shatter my faith and destroy the world I thought was unshakable. When Victor Ramirez first arrived in Willow Creek, he carried himself like a man sent straight from heaven. To most in the congregation, his presence felt like a blessing. To me, it began as admiration and slowly became unease. He was everything an elder was supposed to be: polished, articulate, confident. His shoes gleamed under the Kingdom Hall lights. His talks were peppered with references to Greek words none of us could pronounce. And his voice carried the authority of someone who seemed to know more than the rest of us combined. Families whispered after meetings, "Brother Ramirez has such deep insight." His prayers, so moving that people would tear up, painted him as a spiritual giant. Within a year, he had been promoted to coordinating elder, replacing Brother Lewis, who had led faithfully for over 10 years. Jehovah clearly chose him, one sister remarked to me after the announcement. I smiled politely, but inside, a seed of unease had already been planted. His wife, Elena, was always present but strangely absent at the same time. She answered politely when spoken to, but never volunteered comments during watchtower studies. She looked perpetually exhausted, her pale skin shadowed by dark circles under her eyes. She often nodded off mid-talk, something considered disrespectful in our culture. When asked if she was ill, she always gave the same reply: "Just migraines. Victor helps me manage them." And then there was Sophia, 12 when they arrived. She sat quietly between her parents at every meeting. While other children giggled, whispered, or squirmed in their seats, Sophia sat stiffly, head lowered, speaking only when pressed. Her green eyes sometimes flicked up to meet mine, and in them I saw something no child should carry: fear. I tried to dismiss it as shyness, but the image lingered. In elders' meetings, Victor quickly dominated. We five would gather in the small back office of the Kingdom Hall on Monday nights, reviewing congregation matters. Before it had been collaborative. After Victor's arrival, it became his stage. He quoted letters from the branch office that no one else had seen. He recounted experiences from his years in Phoenix. Difficult cases, wayward youths, miraculous recoveries. He always had the right scripture, the right watchtower reference, the right story. When I or another elder suggested an alternative approach, he would lean back in his chair, give that half smile, and gently correct us with another citation. Never rude, always calm, but always in control. Over time, the rest of us unconsciously deferred to him. Decisions weren't made unless Victor nodded. It wasn't just respect. It was something closer to intimidation. The first Real crack appeared one Saturday morning in 1986 during field service. I was paired with Sophia, who had recently turned 13. She knew scriptures well, reciting them with ease, but her voice lacked enthusiasm. We walked down Maple Street, knocking on doors. At one home, while I was inside speaking with an elderly widow, Sophia waited by the gate. When I came back out, I found her collapsed on the sidewalk. Her skin was ghostly pale, her hands trembling. The widow rushed out with water. Sophia slowly regained consciousness, but her entire body shivered. "Sophia, what happened?" I asked, kneeling beside her. She forced a smile. "It's nothing, Brother Hayes. Just the heat." But it was May, and the weather was mild. "Let's take you home," I said, already worried. At this, panic flashed across her face. "No, please, don't tell my father. I'll be fine." Her voice carried something that froze me, terror. Not the embarrassment of fainting, not the fear of being scolded. It was pure, desperate fear. That was the moment I felt the first deep chill in my bones. After that day, I began paying closer attention. I noticed how Elena was always drowsy, often stumbling slightly when walking to their car. Her speech was slow, her responses delayed. When sisters asked, she always said, "Just the migraines. Victor takes care of me." But it wasn't normal. It was as if she were living in a fog, trapped in some unseen prison. At meetings, I caught Sophia glancing at her mother, then quickly lowering her eyes whenever Victor shifted in his seat. Something was wrong in that family. Another detail gnawed at me, Victor's unusual interest in young girls of the congregation. On shepherding visits, usually done in pairs, he always volunteered for families with teenage daughters. He insisted he had experience counseling youth. I remember one visit to the Johnson family, who had 2 daughters, ages 15 and 17. Victor suggested we speak to them separately from their parents, claiming they'd open up better that way. During the conversation, I watched him lean in too close, his tone soft and coaxing. The girls shifted uncomfortably, but Victor pressed on, asking about their personal struggles, their private feelings. Afterward, as we walked away, I said cautiously, "Brother Ramirez, don't you think it's better to keep parents present? For propriety." He gave me the half smile. "Brother Hayes, you're still young as an elder. Trust me, sometimes youth need space away from parental pressure. I learned this in Phoenix. It works." Once again, I was gently corrected. Once again, unease crawled in my gut. One Thursday night, after a meeting, I returned to hall to retrieve my forgotten Bible. As I passed the elder's office, I heard a voice. The door was slightly ajar. It was Victor. His tone was unlike anything I'd ever heard from him, sharp, threatening. "I told you to stop asking questions," he hissed into the phone. "You're going to get yourself into trouble. A lot of trouble. Some things are better left buried. Do you understand?" My heart pounded. I froze outside that door, listening to the venom in his words. After a pause, I heard the slam of the receiver. Moments later, I slipped away quietly, Bible in hand, but the sound of his voice echoed in my head all night. Who had he been speaking to? What questions? What secret? It was the first time I saw the mask slip. From that point on, I began observing him closely. His dominance in meetings, his special interest in teenage girls, his wife's unexplained sedation, Sophia's fearful eyes. Pieces of a puzzle I didn't yet understand, but that whispered danger. It was October 1987, when the whisper became a scream. I arrived at the Kingdom Hall early one Tuesday evening to check the microphones before the meeting. As I passed the elder's office, I heard whispers, Victor's voice, and another, high-pitched, quivering. My heart sank. I pressed closer to the door. It was Sophia. Her words were muffled, broken by soft sobs. I stood frozen, my conscience screaming. If I knocked, it would appear I distrusted an elder. If I walked away, I might leave a child in danger. Finally, I knocked firmly. Brother Ramirez? Is everything okay there? Silence. 10 seconds that felt like an eternity. Then the door opened. Victor stood tall, face calm, smile polite. Brother Hayes. I was just having a private talk with Sophia about some adolescent matters. Perfectly appropriate. Behind him, Sophia sat slumped in a chair, eyes red and swollen from crying. Sophia, are you all right? I asked. She gave the smallest nod, lips pressed tight. Victor answered for her. She's just struggling with some normal teenage issues. Nothing serious. But her eyes met mine for a brief second, and in them, I saw it again, the silent plea of a child trapped in fear. That night, as I sat through the meeting, I couldn't hear a word of the talk. My eyes stayed on Sophia. The flinch when her father shifted, the stiffness in her shoulders, the clenched fists when he spoke. The congregation saw a spiritual leader, but I had seen something else, a father his daughter feared. And I knew, deep down, this was only the beginning. From the moment I saw Sophia Ramirez's swollen, tear-streaked face in that office, I could no longer deny what my conscience had been whispering for months. Something inside the Ramirez household was terribly wrong. But how does a man begin to confront such a thought? An elder was supposed to be a shepherd, a guardian chosen by Jehovah himself. To even consider that one of us could be a predator was like imagining the sun rising in the west. And yet, when I looked into Sophia's eyes, I didn't see rebellion or adolescent drama or exaggerated fears. I saw terror. In the weeks that followed, I began to watch Elena more closely. She had always appeared frail, but now I noticed the details. The slight stumble in her steps, the slurred way she sometimes pronounced words, the way her eyelids seemed to fight gravity. One Thursday night after the meeting, I offered to help her carry some literature to the car. She smiled faintly, accepted, and we walked across the parking lot. Twice, she nearly tripped on flat ground. Sister Ramirez, I said gently, "Are you feeling all right? You seem very tired." She gave a glazed smile. "Just my migraines, Brother Hayes. Victor takes care of me. He knows the right medicine." "Medicine? Which doctor do you see here in Willow Creek?" "Oh, no doctor here. Victor says I don't need one. He gets me what I need." Her tone was casual, as if it were normal for a husband to medicate his wife without medical oversight. But a chill spread through me. A faithful wife, perpetually drugged, claiming her husband took care of her. A daughter, pale and frightened, trembling at the sound of his voice. The pattern was beginning to emerge, though I didn't yet see the whole picture. During meetings, I began sitting where I could observe the Ramirez family. I saw how Sophia stiffened whenever her father leaned close, how she avoided looking at him directly, how, whenever Victor prayed at the microphone, she clenched her fist tight in her lap until her knuckles whitened. These weren't normal signs of a moody teenager. They were signs of someone living in fear. And yet, to everyone else, the Ramirez family seemed the model of faith. Victor's talks were moving, his shepherding visits praised, his presence a source of admiration. The congregation adored him. I began to feel the crushing weight of isolation. If I spoke my suspicions without proof, who would believe me? One Saturday morning, I was again paired with Sophia for field service. We were assigned to a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town. As we walked between houses, I finally found the courage to ask, "Sophia, are you doing all right? You seem sad lately." She paused, her eyes fixed on the ground. For a long time, she said nothing, tracing lines in the dirt with the toe of her shoe. Finally, in a small voice, she asked, "Brother Hayes, If I told you something very serious, would you promise to help me? My heart pounded. Of course. You can tell me anything. She bit her lip, trembling. Even if it's about an elder? There it was. The door cracked open. Yes, I said firmly. Even if it's about an elder. Especially then. She broke down crying, not a soft whimper, but a deep, desperate sob as though she had been holding it in for years. He does things to me, she stammered through tears. And he says if I tell anyone, no one will believe me, that I'll be disfellowshipped for lying. He says I'll lose everything. The world seemed to collapse around me. Every suspicion, every unease, confirmed in a single moment. Her father, the respected elder, was abusing her. I tried to steady my voice. Sophia, how long has this been happening? Since I was 10, she whispered. At first, he said it was special affection. Then it got worse. Now almost every night. I fought the bile rising in my throat. And your mother? Does she know? She can't. He gives her medicine in her food every day. She's always sleepy. She never sees anything. I tried to wake her, but she didn't wake up. I froze. It wasn't just abuse. It was systematic poisoning. What do these pills look like? I asked. Small blue. He keeps them in the bathroom cabinet. I swallowed hard. Sophia, listen to me. You must never be alone with him again. Promise me. But he's my father. I live in his house. How? Find excuses. Stay near your mother. Go to a friend's home. Anything. Just don't be alone with him. Do you understand? She nodded weakly, tears streaking her face. A few days later, before the Tuesday meeting, Sophia slipped me a small folded paper. I got them, she whispered. Inside were 2 small blue tablets. The next morning, I drove to Albuquerque to see a pharmacist I trusted, an old friend of my late father's. I handed him the pill. He examined it carefully, then frowned. This is diazepam, 10 milligrams. It's a powerful tranquilizer, normally prescribed for anxiety or before surgery. If someone's taking this every day, they'd be in a constant fog. It can cause dependency, memory loss, even organ damage if abused. I asked, and if it slipped into food without their knowledge? He looked grim. That's criminal. That's poisoning. The words hit me like a hammer. Victor wasn't just a predator. He was a monster drugging his own wife to silence her. The following week, during an elders' meeting, I decided to test the waters. Brothers, I said, trying to sound casual, I think we should start doing more shepherding visits, especially for families with teenagers. Maybe even in pairs, so no one feels singled out. Victor immediately frowned. That seems unnecessary. We don't want to burden families. I already keep close contact with most of them. Brother Carter nodded thoughtfully. Still, it might be good to have 2 elders together, as recommended. That way, no one feels uncomfortable. I pressed further. We could start with the Ramirez family. Since Victor knows Sophia's situation well, I could accompany him. That way, she'd benefit from both perspectives. For the first time, Victor's calm demeanor cracked. His eyes flashed panic for a split second. Actually, he said quickly, Sophia's case is delicate. It's best I continue working with her alone. Too many voices may confuse her. Brother Lewis tilted his head. But if it's delicate, all the more reason to involve more than one elder, don't you think? Victor's jaw tightened. Brothers, I've handled situations like this before. Trust me. But I no longer trusted him. A week later, something strange happened. On Thursday, neither Elena nor Sophia came to the meeting. Claudia had a migraine, Victor explained smoothly. Sophia stayed to take care of her. Saturday morning, no field service. Sunday, no meeting. By Monday night, at the elders' meeting, I said firmly, we need to visit the Ramirez family. They've been absent too long. Victor waved his hand. They just need rest. I've been checking in. No need to overwhelm them. But Brother Carter frowned. Still, it would be good to show support. Let's plan a visit tomorrow night. I saw it then, the flicker of panic in Victor's eyes. That Tuesday evening, I went home restless. Something gnawed at me. At 3 in the morning, unable to sleep, I drove past the Ramirez house. The entire property was dark. I circled to the back and noticed Sophia's window cracked open. I whispered, "Sophia?" For a moment, silence, then faint sobs. Finally, her face appeared in the dim light. A black eye, a swollen lip. My blood ran cold. "He found out I talked to you," she whispered. "He beat me. He said if I ever tell anyone, he'll kill me and he'll kill you too." The air around me seemed to vanish. This was no longer just whispers in the shadows. This was a war. And if I didn't act, someone, maybe all of us, was going to die. The image of Sophia's bruised face haunted me for days. Her swollen lip, the purple shadow around her eye, the trembling in her voice when she whispered that her father threatened to kill us both. Those things carved themselves into my mind like scars. I thought of my own father's words beneath the mesquite tree when I was a young man. If you ever discover they aren't what they seem, have the courage to walk away. I had laughed at him back then. I had been so sure of my path, so sure that Jehovah's organization could never harbor wickedness. But now, staring at the horror unfolding before me, I realized he had seen something I hadn't, that human corruption could seep even into places that claimed holiness. And if I stayed silent, I'd be no better than Victor. Every meeting at the Kingdom Hall felt like a performance. Victor stood at the microphone, giving eloquent prayers and powerful talks about morality and purity, while Sophia sat rigid in her chair, eyes locked on the floor. I looked around at the congregation. Brothers and sisters nodded in agreement, smiling, inspired by his words. Not one of them knew that the man they admired was a predator who poisoned his wife and brutalized his child. I wanted to scream, to rip the mask off him in front of everyone. But I also knew the way the system worked. To accuse an elder without 2 witnesses was to invite suspicion on yourself. The organization prized order above all else, even at the expense of justice. If I went about this the wrong way, I could be disfellowshipped, cast out, shunned by the very community I had served for decades. But Sophia's tearful face kept returning to me. Could I live with myself if I chose safety over her life? 2 weeks after the night at her window, Sophia slipped a small note into my hand after the Sunday meeting. "Please meet me behind the old library after dark." That evening, I parked my truck by the abandoned brick building at the edge of town. The desert wind carried the scent of dust and mesquite. Sophia appeared from the shadows, clutching a backpack. Her eyes darted nervously. "I don't have much time," she whispered. "He watches me all the time now." "What happened?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She hesitated, then opened her backpack. Inside were small slips of paper, torn from a diary. She handed me one. I read, my stomach churning. March 12th, he came into my room again. I prayed Jehovah would make it stop. I don't think he hears me anymore. Another entry, April 7th. Mama was asleep again. He says the pills keep her calm, but I think they keep her blind. I screamed, but she didn't wake up. Page after page, years of torment documented in the hand of a child. I looked at her, my chest tight. "Sophia, these are enough. You've written proof." She shook her head. "No, they won't believe me. He says everyone loves him, and they'll call me a liar." I clenched my fists. "Then we'll make them believe. I'll take this to the elders, to the authorities if I have to." Her eyes widened. "If you go to the police, they'll disfellowship you. You'll lose everything." I remembered my father's words again. "Maybe so," I said softly, "but better to lose everything than to lose my soul." That week, I requested an emergency elders meeting. I prayed the other men would have the courage to face the truth. We gathered in the small back room of the Kingdom Hall. Victor sat at the head of the table, calm and smiling, as if he already knew he was untouchable. "Brothers," I began, "I've come across disturbing information regarding Brother Ramirez's household. Sister Sophia has confided serious concerns about abuse." The room went silent. Brother Lewis shifted uncomfortably. Brother Carter furrowed his brow. Victor let out a soft laugh. "Really, Daniel? This again? Sophia is a troubled girl. I've told you she's rebellious. She imagines things. I placed Sophia's diary pages on the table. These are her words, written over years. This is no imagination. The brothers leaned in, reading with growing unease. Victor's smile faltered for the first time. Brothers, surely you don't believe this childish scribbling over my record of service? Brother Carter looked at him sharply. Victor, these are serious accusations. If even half of this is true, you've disqualified yourself as an elder and as a Christian. Victor's eyes narrowed. Be careful, Carter. To accept an accusation without two witnesses is unscriptural. You know the policy. Brother Lewis looked torn, his voice shaky. Maybe we should let the circuit overseer handle this. It's beyond us. I slammed my hand on the table. Beyond us? A child is being destroyed, and you're worried about policy? Jehovah sees. What will he think if we sit here silent? The room grew tense. Victor leaned back, folding his arms, his eyes cold. You're playing a dangerous game, Daniel, he said softly. Accusing an elder without proof is slander. Do you really want to risk your reputation over the lies of a teenage girl? That night, I couldn't sleep. The meeting had ended in a stalemate. Carter was shaken but hesitant. Lewis deferred responsibility. And Victor walked out with his title intact. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Sophia's words echoing. He says no one will believe me. I realized then the organization's policies weren't designed to protect victims. They were designed to protect appearances. And if I want to save Sophia, I couldn't rely on the elders. I couldn't rely on the congregation. I would have to act outside the system. The next evening, I drove again to the Ramirez house. This time, I didn't circle quietly. I knocked boldly on the door. Victor opened it, his face a mask of calm, but his eyes seethed with rage. Brother Hayes, he said coolly, what an unexpected visit. I need to speak with Sophia, I said firmly. She's asleep, he replied, stepping forward to block the doorway. And even if she weren't, you have no right to interfere in my household. I met his stare, refusing to back down. If you lay another hand on her, Victor, I will go to the police myself. For a long moment, silence. Then he leaned close, his voice a venomous whisper. You think you're a hero? You're nothing. If you cross me, I'll destroy you. The elders, the congregation, everyone will turn their backs on you. And when that happens, you'll have no one. I held his gaze. Better no one than to be complicit with you. Then I walked away, my legs trembling, my heart pounding. That night, as I sat alone at my kitchen table, I thought again of my father. Have the courage to walk away. I had always assumed he meant leaving religion for secular life. But now I understand. He meant walking away from anything that masqueraded as truth but hid corruption beneath. I realized that if I stayed within the structure, bound by its policies, Sophia would never be saved. So I made my decision. I would take her diary, her pills, and my testimony, and I would go to the authorities, even if it cost me everything. I woke before dawn that Friday, the desert sky still wrapped in shadows. On the kitchen table sat the sealed envelope. Inside were Sophia's diary pages and the 2 blue pills I'd taken to the pharmacist. They looked so small and fragile. Yet I knew they contained years of suffering and enough truth to shatter the facade of a respected elder. I sat with my coffee, staring at the envelope, trembling with the weight of what I was about to do. For decades, I had trusted that the congregation, the elders, the organization itself, would always align with Jehovah's justice. Now I was stepping outside it, not against Jehovah, but against corruption that dared to use his name as cover. I whispered a prayer. Jehovah, give me strength, not for me, but for Sophia and Elena. Do not let me fail them. By 9 o'clock, I walked into the Sandoval County Sheriff's Office in Albuquerque. My legs felt heavy, but determination pushed me forward. At the front desk, a deputy with tired eyes asked, "Can I help you, sir?" "Yes," I said, my voice shaking. "I need to report crime. It involved a child and her father." They ushered me into a small interview room. After a few minutes, a detective entered. Detective Clara Ruiz, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. She sat across from me, notepad ready. "Start from the beginning," she said. I told her everything. The diary entries, the pills, Sophia's black eye, Elena's sedation, Victor's threats. My voice cracked more than once, but she never interrupted. She only nodded, writing quickly, her face grave. When I handed her the envelope, she examined the pills in their plastic pouch. Diazepam, she muttered. Controlled substance. If he's dosing his wife without consent, that's felony poisoning. She looked up at me. Sir, you realize making a false report about something like this carries serious consequences? I met her eyes. I know, but I'm telling you the truth, and that girl's life depends on it. For the first time, her expression softened. We'll open an investigation, but you should prepare yourself. Cases like this are hard. If the girl doesn't testify, if the wife won't corroborate, it'll be his word against yours. I'll stand with her, I said firmly, no matter what it costs. By Sunday, the whispers had already begun. After the meeting, as I stood by the literature table, Brother Lewis approached me, his face pale. Daniel, did you go to the police about Victor? I didn't answer right away. Finally, I said quietly, I had no choice. His eyes widened. Do you realize what you've done? The branch teaches us to handle matters internally. You've broken confidentiality. Confidentiality doesn't excuse crime. I snapped, louder than I intended. A few heads turned. Later, as I walked toward my truck, I felt the weight of eyes on me. Some brothers and sisters offered hesitant nods. Others turned away entirely. And there, near the hall's entrance, stood Victor. His expression was calm, even pleasant, but his eyes burned with venom. Good morning, Brother Hayes, he said, voice smooth as silk. I hear you've been spreading serious accusations. Dangerous ones. I clenched my fists. You'll answer for what you've done, Victor. Maybe not today, but soon. He leaned close, lowering his voice. Do you really think the congregation will believe you over me? You've signed your own disfellowshipping order, Daniel. I walked away, but my hands trembled on the steering wheel the entire drive home. 3 days later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find 2 elders, Brother Lewis and Brother Carter. Both looked deeply uncomfortable. Daniel, Carter began, we've been asked to meet with you. The branch has heard of your actions. I swallowed hard. You mean reporting a crime? Lewis looked pained. You know our procedure. Accusations require 2 witnesses. To take matters to worldly authorities undermines Jehovah's arrangement. Jehovah's arrangement? I snapped. Jehovah hates wickedness. He does not protect abusers in his name. Carter raised a hand. We're not saying nothing happened. We're saying you jeopardize unity. The congregation is unsettled. They look to us for stability, not scandal. I laughed bitterly. So unity is more important than truth? Their silence was my answer. Finally, Carter sighed. A judicial committee will be formed. You'll be asked to explain your actions. Until then, please refrain from further interference. When they left, I sank into my chair, the reality crashing down. The very men who should have protected Sophia were preparing to punish me instead. That evening, I drove to the Ramirez house. Elena opened the door, her eyes glassy, her movements slow. Elena, I said softly, do you know what Victor's been giving you? She frowned, confused. Medicine, for my migraines. Victor says it helps. I showed her the pharmacist's note explaining diazepam. This isn't for migraines. He's been drugging you, keeping you sedated so you can't see what he's doing. Her lips trembled. No, Victor loves me. He cares for me. Elena, I said firmly, Sophia has been begging for your help. She needs you. Please, open your eyes. She burst into tears, collapsing into a chair. I don't know what to believe anymore. He's my husband, my elder, my spiritual head. I knelt beside her. He is also your abuser, and he's destroying your daughter. If you stay silent, you become his accomplice. Her sobs shook her entire frame. For the first time, I saw the possibility that she might awaken from the fog he'd forced upon her. The following Thursday, when I walked into the Kingdom Hall, the shift was undeniable. Conversations hushed as I passed. People who once embraced me now kept their distance. One sister whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "He's an apostate, turning on the elders like that." Another murmured, "Jehovah will judge him." But the most painful was when a young brother I had studied with, now baptized, avoided my eyes altogether. Victor, meanwhile, moved the hall like a king among loyal subjects. Smiles, handshakes, admiration, none of it had faded. If anything, his aura of righteousness seemed magnified in their eyes, as if my accusations had only proven his strength. I realized in the depth of his power. It wasn't just in his title. It was in the loyalty of those who would rather cling to appearances than confront evil. 2 weeks into the investigation, Detective Ruiz called me. We interviewed Sophia at school. She's terrified, but she confirmed enough to justify a warrant. We'll move soon. But you should know, he has friends in high places. If he senses we're closing in, he might act desperate. Her voice dropped. "Be careful, Mr. Hayes. Men like him don't go down without a fight." After I hung up, I sat in silence. The war I had chosen wasn't just spiritual anymore. It was life and death. That night, as I was preparing for bed, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, Daniel, or you'll regret it." No name, no context, just a message that froze my blood. I locked the doors, loaded the old revolver my father had kept, and sat awake in the dark, staring out the window. I knew then. Victor wasn't going to wait for the law. He was going to strike first. The morning after the threatening text, I sat at the kitchen table, revolver still by my side, uneaten toast on my plate. My hands shook as I stared at the phone, waiting for another message. None came, but silence was worse than words. Silence meant he was planning something. I whispered to myself, "Jehovah, if you see this, don't let fear stop me now." That afternoon, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. It bore no return address, only the words, "Brother Hayes, you are requested to appear before the Judicial Committee this Tuesday at 7 p.m. My chest tightened. I knew what it meant. They wanted me silenced. Inside, the letter cited gross disobedience to Jehovah's arrangement and creating division within the congregation. Not a word about Victor. Not a word about Sophia. I folded the letter slowly, placed it back in the envelope, and whispered, "So this is how they protect wolves." 2 days later, I pulled into the grocery store parking lot. As I stepped out of my truck, I noticed a black SUV idling at the far end. The driver's window rolled down just enough for me to see a familiar smirk. Victor's associate, a man he often studied with. The SUV followed me through town, keeping its distance, never overtaking. At night, I heard footsteps outside my house, though no one ever knocked. Once, I found fresh tire tracks near the back gate, though I hadn't had visitors in days. Victor wasn't just threatening me now. He was hunting me. Tuesday arrived heavy with dread. I wore my best suit, though my tie trembled as I knotted it. When I entered the back room of the Kingdom Hall, 3 elders sat at the table, Brother Carter, Brother Lewis, and a younger elder from another congregation, Brother Allen, brought in for neutrality. Victor wasn't there. He didn't need to be. His influence was in the room without him. Carter began. "Brother Hayes, we are deeply saddened by your conduct. You've spread serious accusations about an elder without proper witnesses. You've gone to the police, defying Jehovah's order to keep matters within the congregation." I leaned forward. "Do you realize what you're saying? A child is being abused. A wife is being drugged. And your concern is not their suffering, but my loyalty to policy." Lewis looked down, avoiding my eyes. Allen, the younger elder, cleared his throat. "Brother Hayes, if these things are true, we trust Jehovah will reveal them in his time. But your course brings reproach on his name." My voice rose, trembling with passion. Jehovah revealed it already, through Sophia's tears, through her diary, through the evidence in her own handwriting. How dare you ignore that? Carter's jaw tightened. Your defiance leaves us no choice. Unless you repent and withdraw your accusations, we will proceed with disfellowshipping. For a moment, the room was silent. I thought of my friends, my spiritual family, the people I had broken bread with for decades. If they cut me off, I would become a ghost, shunned, ignored, erased. But then I thought of Sophia, clutching her backpack, whispering, "They'll never believe me." I stood. My voice is steady now. If Jehovah himself disfellows me for defending the innocent, so be it. I answered to him, not to men. I walked out before they could speak again. That night, Elena called me. Her voice was trembling, but clear. "Daniel, I found the pills in Victor's drawer. The same ones you showed me." I didn't want to believe it, but now her voice broke. Now I can't deny it. "Elena," I said gently, "you have the power to save your daughter. Will you stand with her?" Silence, then a sob. "I'm so afraid, but I can't let her suffer anymore." It was a first crack in Victor's fortress. The very next morning, Detective Ruiz called. "We've secured a warrant," she said. "We're moving to the Ramirez home tonight." "But Mr. Hayes," her tone grew stern, "you need to stay out of it. This is dangerous, and if he senses you're involved, he could lash out." I promised her I'd keep my distance. But deep inside, I knew I wouldn't be able to. Thursday evening, before the meeting, Brother Carter pulled me aside. His face was heavy with grief. "The committee's decision is final. You're disfellowshipped. The announcement will be made Sunday." The words hit like a hammer. A lifetime of service, erased in a sentence. But strangely, I didn't feel defeated. I felt free. If they wanted to brand me as an apostate for defending a child, so be it. My conscience was clean. That night, as the desert sky turned purple with dusk, I sat on my porch, revolver resting on the table. The air was heavy, electric, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I knew Detective Ruiz and her team would strike soon, but I also knew Victor, and men like him never surrendered quietly. Sure enough, headlights appeared at the end of my street. A black SUV. It slowed, idling across from my house. The window rolled down. I saw Victor's face, calm, smiling. He raised a hand in mock salute, then drove off into the night. It wasn't a retreat. It was a promise. At 11:42 p.m., my phone rang. Elena's voice was frantic. "Daniel, please, they're here. He knows. He's angry." He locked the door. "I can't get to Sophia. Please help us." Before I could answer, the line went dead. I grabbed a revolver, heart pounding, and ran for the truck. Detective Ruiz's warning echoed in my ears. Stay out of it. But how could I stay away when a mother and child were trapped with a predator? I drove through Willow Creek like a man outrunning his own heartbeat, the truck rattling over washboard roads, dust streaming behind me. Ahead, I caught the first flicker of red and blue. Police cruisers fanned out across the Ramirez property, their beams cutting across the stucco walls. Officers moved low and fast, hands to holsters, voices sharp but controlled. I pulled to the curb a half block away, chest heaving, palms slick against the steering wheel. "Mr. Hayes." Detective Clara Ruiz strode toward me, one hand signaling I should stay back. "You promised." "Elena called me," I said, already stepping out, my voice hoarse. "She said he'd locked them in. I had to come." Her jaw clenched, but her voice softened. "Then pray we're not too late." I stood at the edge of the sidewalk, while officers clustered at the front door. Another team circled to the back. A battering ram thudded once, twice. Then the door burst open with a crack that seemed to split the night itself. Shouting rolled out like thunder. "Police! Search warrant! Hands where we can see." The next second stretched into an eternity. I could see movement to front windows, shapes, shadows, a crash like shattered glass. Then, a struggle silhouetted against the hallway light. An officer staggered back, and I caught a glimpse of Victor Ramirez. Jaw set, eyes ablaze, a kitchen knife flashing in his hand. "Drop the weapon," an officer barked. For a heartbeat, I feared the worst. Then Victor's hand faltered. The knife clanged to the floor, and officers surged forward. They took him down hard, hands pinned behind him, wrists bound with a brutal click. He twisted his head toward the open doorway and saw me. There was again that practiced calm, that immaculate veneer reformed in an instant. "This is your doing," he said, almost conversational, as if we were discussing the weather after a meeting. "Apostate, Something inside me thawed at his words. Not rage, not triumph. A simple, mournful certainty. The mask had slipped, and now there was no putting it back on. Where's Sophia? I asked Detective Ruiz, forcing the words out. A call came from the back of the house. We got the wife, unconscious, pulse steady. Girls in the bedroom, injured but responsive. My knees nearly gave out. I gripped the fence to steady myself as paramedics hurried past with a stretcher. A minute later, they rolled Elena through the doorway. Head lolling, face pale, a tangled halo of dark hair across the pillow. An EMT called out vitals, and I caught a single word that clenched my stomach. Sedation. Then Sophia emerged, flanked by a female officer and a medic. Her, I was purple and swollen, lips split. When she saw me, she gave a small, broken nod, just enough to tell me she was still there, still fighting. It's going to be okay, I said. You're safe now. Her eyes filled. Thank you, Brother Hayes. The ambulance doors slammed and engines roared to life. As they sped away, an officer exited the house holding a clear evidence bag with a large, unlabeled pill bottle inside, blue tablets clinking softly. Diazepam, Detective Ruiz said. Plenty of it. They found more. A locked drawer with an envelope of photographs that made my gut twist. A notebook with Victor's meticulous, disciplined notes about his daughter. Phrases that look holy at first glance and sicken you when you realize what they meant. Another bottle of pills in a kitchen cabinet above the coffee cups. The inventory officer called out each item, and with every word the simple story of a loving elder dissolved into its true shape. When they marched Victor toward the cruiser, he lifted his chin in a parody of dignity. You think this will stand? He asked me, voice low. Jehovah will clear my name. He always does. He doesn't need your help, I said. The door shut. The cruiser pulled away. And with it, the spell that had held this congregation, this town, for far too long. In the morning, the sun rose hard and bright across Willow Creek, as if the desert was trying to scrub the night clean. It couldn't, but it tried. I drove straight to Willow Creek General Hospital. In one room, Elena lay within 4 drip, whispering into her arm. Already the fog had begun to thin. When she opened her eyes and saw me, they were filled with tears. I didn't want to see, she said, voice rasping. It was easier. Easier doesn't mean better, I said gently. But you're here, and Sophia's here. That matters. In the next ward, Sophia lay propped up with pillows, bruised but fierce. She reached for my hand. Is he gone? For now, I said, and soon for longer. Detective Ruiz will help you tell the truth, the whole truth. She held my gaze. I'm ready. Detectives came and went. Nurses moved like quiet angels. By afternoon, Ruiz stepped into the hall with me and exhaled. We'll charge him with felony sexual abuse of a minor, unlawful restraint, possession and administration of a controlled substance without consent, and assault. With the photos, the pills, the diary pages, and her statement, it's solid. And Elena? She's consented to testing. If toxicology confirms long-term sedation, that strengthens everything. Ruiz hesitated. Be prepared. The congregation may rally around him at first. That happens. Familiar stories are more comforting than the truth. I know, I said. I've seen it already. Sunday evening, the Kingdom Hall buzzed with a strange mixture of dread and denial. News of the arrest had spread, but so had rationalizations. Satan's attack. Lies from opposers. Misunderstanding. I stood in back, not to be welcome, but to bear witness. The presiding elder, Brother Carter, cleared his throat. We have an announcement. Daniel Hayes is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Silence. Then the murmured rustle of bodies shifting, eyes sliding away. It was as if an invisible line had been painted on the carpet, and I was now on the wrong side of it. As people filed out, a few offered a small, grief-heavy nod. Most looked past me as if I were glass. Brother Lewis paused. Pain etched across his face, words dying unspoken. He moved on. I walked into the fading light, unexpectedly lighting myself. Wounded, yes, but unburdened. They could strip a title. They could not rewrite what had happened in that house, or what we had done to stop it. The trial took place 6 months later in Bernalillo County. The courtroom smelled faintly of varnish and paper. Victor sat at the defense table in a gray suit, hair trimmed, Bible on display. Every inch a devout man wronged. But evidence doesn't pray, and truth doesn't tremble. Sophia testified with a courage that made the gallery hold its breath. She answered steadily, tears coming only once, when the prosecutor asked why she hadn't told sooner. Because, he said, no one would believe me, she said. Then she glanced at me. He said I'd lose everything. But Mr. Hayes believed me. Elena took the stand next. Toxicology reports confirmed benzodiazepine, exposure consistent with long-term, unprescribed use. She described the fog, the confusion, the waking nightmares she mistaken for migraines. I thought he was caring for me, she said, voice breaking. He was keeping me blind. The defense tried to suggest teenage exaggeration, marital dysfunction, religious persecution. But the photographs, the pills, the diary pages, the medical charts, they spoke in a language juries understand. The verdict, guilty on all major counts. The sentence, 15 years. When the judge read it, a sound escaped me, half prayer, half exhale. Victor didn't look at me. He kept his eyes on a point far away, still crafting a story where he was righteous and the world unjust. The bailiff led him away, and the door clicked shut behind the man who had once ruled a room with a single glance. Disfellowshipping is a peculiar kind of death. You live in the same town, walk the same streets, but people who once called you brother now behave as though you've been buried. I bought groceries. They turned down other aisles. I waved at men I'd studied with. They studied their shoes. Then, one afternoon on the plaza, I met Father Miguel Herrera. He had been the priest at St. Andrew's longer than some cottonwoods had been standing. We had never spoken, out of habit and rules and fear. He walked toward me with a smile that felt like sunlight. "Mr. Hayes," he said, extending his hand. "I heard what you did. I'd like to say thank you. I don't know what I am anymore. I admitted. A believer, a traitor, a fool." He chuckled softly. "Perhaps a man who chose conscience over convenience. That's called courage in my book." He tilted his head. "My door is open, if you ever want to talk. No expectations." I went that week, unsure of what I was seeking. We sat in the quiet of the rectory, beside shelves of worn theology and a simple wooden cross. I told him everything. He did not try to recruit me. He listened. He asked gentle questions. He left space for the grief. Over months, I came to understand faith not as a fence but a field, not a single track, but a compass. I learned to pray again without scripts, without fear. One spring morning, sunlight pouring through stained glass like desert dawn, I asked to enter the Catholic Church. It wasn't a rejection so much as an arrival, of mercy, of humility, of an unguarded yes. Father Miguel laid a hand on my shoulder. "Welcome home." Years passed, as years do. Sophia finished school in Phoenix, then college, then a master's degree. She became a counselor specializing in childhood trauma. Fierce, tender, brilliant. The first time she spoke at Willow Creek Community Center, she looked out over a room full of parents and teachers and said, "Children tell us in 100 small ways. Our job is to learn their language." More than one person cried. Elena went through a long, careful detox. There were bad days, shaking hands, jagged dreams, but there were good ones, too. Sunlight on the porch, tea with friends, soft laughter that returned like rain after drought. She learned about consent, about coercion, about how love and control are not the same thing. As for me, I started meeting with others who had left controlling groups, witnesses, yes, but also those from rigid churches and closed communities. We gathered in the back room of Ruth Ortega's bakery on Thursdays, the air saturated with cinnamon and courage. We drank coffee and told the truths we'd been trained to swallow. We didn't fix one another. We listened, and that was its own medicine. One evening, Father Miguel said something that lodged in my bones. "You didn't lose faith when you left. You let falsehood fall away so your faith could breathe." Last year, a letter arrived from Lucia in Las Cruces, 18 and brave. She had seen a short interview I'd given about the case, posted by a local paper. "Mr. Hayes," She wrote in neat, careful script, "Your story helped me tell the truth about my father. He was an elder, too. I thought no one would believe me, but the police did. My counselor did. You showed me there is life after leaving." I read it twice, then a third time, the old ache rising and washing clean. I wrote back what I know now, that silence is the abuser's first accomplice, that institutions are only as holy as the protection they offer the most vulnerable, that conscience, properly formed, is not rebellion but reverence. Last month, Sophia called me with laughter in her voice I hadn't heard since she was a child. "Daniel, I'm getting married," she said. "His name is Aaron. He's patient, and he listens." When I told him my story, he didn't flinch. He said, "I'm grateful someone stood up for you." I went to the wedding under an open sky on the outskirts of Phoenix. Tables set with sunflowers, a breeze that smelled like creosote after rain. When the officiant asked if anyone wished to speak, I kept my word simple. "Sophia, you took what tried to break you and turned it into a bridge for others. That's the holiest thing I know." We ate tamales and laughed until twilight, and for the first time in years, I felt the town inside me go quiet and kind. I still walk past the Kingdom Hall, sometimes. The parking lot fills, families spill out, the desert keeps its counsel. New elders now, new talks, new studies. But I know, because truth has a way of working like water through rock. That seeds were planted when one man in a small town chose to believe a girl with a bruised eye and a shaking voice. I am 72. My hands are rough with time, my heart a little gentler than it used to be. When I look back, I don't regret the years I spent serving among Jehovah's Witnesses. They taught me discipline, a love for scripture, a hunger for meaning. What I regret is only the human fear that insisted reputation must come before righteousness. If you've read this far, perhaps it's because some part of this river runs through you, too. Maybe you're standing at the threshold of a hard choice. Maybe you're afraid of what the truth will cost. Here's what I've learned. Truth costs less than a life lived in a lie. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that a child's safety, a woman's freedom, a conscience unshackled, are worth the price. Faith is not proven by who we exclude, but by who we protect. In the end, the secret that broke Willow Creek did not break me. It remade me. And if this old man has any say in the matter, it will keep remaking this town one honest story at a time. You know, I didn't plan to tell this story tonight. For years, it lived in the shadows of my chest, like an old box tucked in the attic, too heavy to lift, too painful to open. But the truth has a way of whispering, and eventually, those whispers grow into a tide that can no longer be held back. I speak now because silence is a prison, and I've lived in enough of those. I speak because someone out there, maybe you, needs to know that broken doesn't mean buried, and wounded doesn't mean worthless. Life has its storms, fierce and unrelenting, and I was swept under more times than I can count. But storms don't last forever. The same rain that blinds us also waters the soil where tomorrow's hope will bloom. And those scars may remain. They are not reminders of defeat, but survival, proof that we endured. If you are listening and you've carried a secret like mine, hold on. You are not alone, no matter what the walls around you have made you believe. There is a morning waiting beyond the longest night, and when it comes, it will carry light enough for both of us. I tell this story now because legacy is not what we hoard in silence, but what we pass on in truth. My grandchildren will not inherit my chains. They will inherit my freedom, bought through pain, but also through courage. So, if this story moved you, if it stirred something in the quiet places of your heart, please leave a comment, share it, subscribe. Not for me, but for the voices still trembling in the dark, waiting to be heard. Every echo of truth strengthens the next soul brave enough to speak. As for me, I will no longer be known only as the man who carried this burden. Tonight, I lay that name down and I rise as someone new, lighter, freer, unashamed. My name is Daniel Hayes. And this is where my story ends and my life begins.